This is a Mercedes Benz C300 Coupe. Now, I know it's not the most exciting Mercedes in the world. It's not a C63, it's not an E63, it's not a GT63 at all. But the C300 still packs plenty of luxury. And for an entry-level car into the Mercedes-Benz world, it's pretty good. This C300 Coupe is spec'd with the AMG line Night package, which basically gives it some cool AMG features and styling cues that you'd see on an AMG. That includes this little mesh grille with the hexagons on it. It also includes black painted carbon mirror caps and other things like that. It also includes things like these 19-inch wheels that come on the Mercedes with the AMG line Night package. They make the car look more sporty, and frankly, they make it look nicer and more expensive. The AMG line also comes with other things like drilled disc brakes to improve braking performance. Something I always loved about the Mercedes coupes, whether it be the C-Class coupe, the E-Class coupe, or the S-Class coupe, is the way it just looks. The sweeping lines, the beautiful coupe shape, the way they have the spoiler set up on the rear tail, it just looks really good, and Mercedes just does the coupe look very well. The next thing I want to talk about with the C300 is how intricate the headlights actually look. If you look at the headlights and look at all the LEDs, it looks super cool, and Mercedes did a really good job of making the LEDs look very unique for this car. Next thing I want to move on to is actually the bumper. If you see these two big things sticking out, these are only mandated in the United States. In Europe, they don't have the regulation that states a bumper has to be so big to protect you during crash incidents. The United States is the only country that does this, so for the United States spec Mercedes, they have these little things on them. They don't look too great. The next thing I want to talk about is actually the exhaust. Now, if you see down here, you have these massive exhaust holes that look very aggressive and sporty, even for a C300, but if you actually look in there, they're not real. They're just very small pipes. Moving on to the interior, and the first thing I want to start off is with how well Mercedes manufactures their interiors. Now, I get it, this is just a baseline C300, it has some upgrades, but it's missing some like ventilated seats or a fully digital gauge cluster. But even then, Mercedes does an amazing job of making this car feel very, very comfortable. Starting off with the steering wheel, you have a very sporty and aggressive looking steering wheel that comes on all C-classes, baseline or not, unless you upgrade to a heated steering wheel, which the heating steering wheel looks a little different than this. You can control the center infotainment system with this. You can control the little screen in the gauge cluster using the steering wheel. You also have your cruise control settings on here, as well as your volume settings and a bunch of other stuff as well as that. You move into your gauge cluster. Again, you can get a digital gauge cluster on this. This has the two analog dials, but even then, the screen in the middle of those two analog dials is pretty large. So you won't run into any issues where you're not going to be able to see any information, though I haven't been able to find a tire pressure monitoring system yet. I'm sure it's in there, but I cannot find it. Moving on to the center infotainment system, you have Mercedes MBUX system, which is pretty good in my opinion. It's not the best in the world, but it's pretty good. The icons on it kind of make it look like something straight out of Windows 7. It's a little odd in how cartoonish they can look, but it's still a good infotainment system, and it's not touchscreen. It's all controlled by this spin wheel down here. Now, the idea of the spin wheel is that you don't have to take your eyes off the road to really focus on what you're doing with the touchscreen. You can have your hand down here maneuvering everything while you kind of glance over and peer over, while it's still having your main focus be on the road, which I kind of like that idea. The spin wheel's nice. I was using it at first, and it was kind of took a second to get used to because you couldn't do touchscreen. But it's not bad, and if you need to answer a phone call pretty quickly, you have a control on the steering wheel for that as well. You also have a spinny thing down here for your volume and your drive mode selector, which has Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, and Individual. You also have your auto stop start, your power for the infotainment system, and then your seatbelt thing. Now, if you press this seatbelt button, as you see, it just pops something out to bring my seatbelt to me, like in Mercedes fashion. Moving on to the door panel over here, it's going to be the same on the passenger side as well. You do have your seat controls. Usually in cars, the seat controls are on the side of the seat, but the thought is from Mercedes that if you're wearing a nice watch or something, you don't really want to stick that down there and fumble for stuff and scratch your watch. So they put it on the door controls with all their seating memories. You have your heated seat function right here, and then you also have a blank switch. That blank switch is going to be for your optional ventilated seats that this car did not come with. You also have your speaker system on the door as well. That is the Burmester surround sound system, which sounds pretty good. One of the best ones I've ever heard. And moving on to the main center console under the infotainment system, you do have your three vents that Mercedes classically has. I think they look really good and give the car kind of an appearance that no other German car has. You also have all your climate control settings and then some of your more infotainment settings with a Mercedes clock sitting right here. A clock that is on the wrong time, that is. Moving right here, you have your center console, which opens up. You have 2 USB ports and an SD card for your navigation. And then over here, you have your glove box as well. You also have a trunk lock button in here too, so if you want to lock the trunk, you can do that through the glove box, or you can slide to unlock and have it unlocked. You also have a power sliding glass sunroof up here, which just uses this button to open and close it up here. It provides a good amount of light, though it is sunny out right now, so I have it closed, which provides a good amount of shade. And I just want to talk about the seats real quick. These seats are actually very nice, on top of being very cool looking. They're this sport style kind of bucket seat, but they're like 10-way power adjustable and very comfortable and very sleek looking, and they look very good in this beige color. And speaking of leather, I just want to touch on more of how opulent this interior really is. If you come down here and touch the door bin, the exterior of it is not a hard plastic like you would expect. It's actually this very soft touch material that just feels really nice to touch. You also have AMG designed floor mats because this C300 has the AMG night package on it, which includes these floor mats along with it. I think that about wraps it up for the interior. Let's move on to the driving portion and see how this thing really drives. All right, so driving the C300. First thing I want to just talk about is just how much pep this thing actually has for having a 4-cylinder. It makes 255 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. It's just a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. And is sent through a 9-speed automatic transmission, which is a dual clutch, which makes the shifts lightning quick as well. Sport Plus tightens up the steering, increases throttle response, the exhaust gets louder, and the engine noise that actually comes from this car when it's in Sport or Sport Plus mode is actually pretty nice. For a 4-cylinder, I enjoy it. As you listen, you can hear it. It just sounds very deep and throaty for being a 4-cylinder. I'm getting onto a highway right now, and it doesn't do bad. I mean, it pulls pretty quickly without having any issues. And when I say, so I'm in Sport Plus now, the steering, when it tightens up, it gets pretty direct. Yeah, there's some dead space that way, so if you don't accidentally nudge the steering wheel, it doesn't like shoot you off the highway. It gets pretty direct after you pass that dead area and goes wherever you want it to go. The throttle response is also pretty good. Now, it's not as fast as, let's say, a 330i, and then if you get the 4MATIC version of this, the 4MATIC version is also faster, and that's because it's all-wheel drive. But the rear-wheel drive of this, I would say, is a little more fun and really should be what it's had as. It's a fun car to drive. It's not so overpowered that it becomes like, oh, if I step on the gas pedal, am I gonna lose traction? But it's enough power where you actually have a lot of fun driving the car in a sporty way. Now, as for sitting in here and comfort-wise, the ride in every single mode tends to be a little bumpy. It tends to be a little harsh, and I get it, these are German sports cars, so they're going to be a little harsh, but you're definitely not on the level of, like, Range Rover. I love how you can control the infotainment system with this steering wheel. I think Mercedes doing that is brilliant. Now, one thing I've always liked about Mercedes is how they put the gear selector on the steering wheel column. It's just really nice to have there. You know, very easy to reach. You don't have to put your hand down here or anything. Mercedes I can tell the focus of this car was don't take your hands off the steering wheel if you don't have to. You can control everything through the steering wheel of this car, other than like the climate control. But I think that about wraps it up for the driving portion. Great car, very speedy, comfortable, but the ride is a little harsh when going over bumps. So that is the Mercedes C300 Coupe. It's got decent performance for having a little 4-cylinder, and it's really good looking, and on top of that, you get luxury. Now, this one is for sale for $44,000. You can find them for more expensive or cheaper depending on the options you get. I think it's a great deal. New standard, this is a $47,000 car without any options, but you can start to find them for cheaper. So if you're looking for a luxury coupe that has decent performance, I mean, the C300 would not be a bad option. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button down below. If you want to see more from us, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.